Let's take a walk down television memory lane. Way before smartphones, home computers, and social media, if you wanted to know what was happening in the world, you watched the evening network news and crossed your fingers the world was still spinning. There was always a trusted man sitting in the anchor chair. TV executives and male colleagues overwhelmingly believed that women lacked the credibility and the commanding voice to deliver the most important stories of the day. They insisted viewers would not accept or trust news delivered by a woman. ABC tested the waters by having Barbara Walters co-anchor the evening news with Harry Reasoner. That was in 1976. Since then, there have only been 3 women to solo anchor a network evening newscast. Katie Couric started in 2006. Diane Sawyer was appointed in 2009. And after years of covering the most critical stories of the day, in 2019, Norah O'Donnell became the 3rd woman to solo anchor an evening network newscast.
Good evening. Tonight is the start of a new era for the CBS Evening News as we broadcast from Washington.
It certainly is unusual for a White House chief of staff to resign at the beginning of an election year.
In that video, you can see the gunman running through the metal detectors, and he fired off 1 or 2 rounds.
His speed was rather incredible. Actually, it was like a blur.
How did he get that close with the place swarming with security?
Norah O'Donnell's latest role includes contributing correspondent for 60 Minutes and senior correspondent for CBS. As if that's not enough, she's also the author of a new book, We the Women, The Hidden Heroes Who Shaped America. Norah joins us this morning. Welcome to Great Day.
It's so great to be back in Texas.
Yes, because you spend a lot of time in Texas. Okay, you're born in Washington, D.C., good Irish stock. You're a military brat. Your dad was an Army colonel and physician. Your sister kind of followed in his footsteps, works at Walter Reed.
Yes.
All right, so you moved to San Antonio at 3 years old. And of course, San Antonio, as a lot of people know, is military city. Do you remember those early days in San Antonio? Because you did come back.
Absolutely. I absolutely loved growing up in San Antonio, Texas. I still talk to my best friends from Texas every single day. We text each other.
But I haven't gotten a call, Norah.
Well, they watch you, Deborah. Okay. They know you.
At 10, you moved to Seoul, South Korea. I grew up part of my early years in Taiwan, and that taught me so much about the world is bigger than where you are. But you also got some early experience in broadcasting. You were teaching English lessons?
It's one of the privileges of having a family that serves in the military. So you're right. When I was 10 years old, I lived in Seoul, South Korea, and my mom met someone and said, you know, we need someone to help teach English to Koreans. So I recorded tapes. I did a television show in Seoul, South Korea at the age of 10 years old. That was my entrance into reading the news, and here I am today.
Yeah, but did you think about that as a career at that age, or was it just something you were doing?
I think part of me did. You know, I would introduce the show. I would sit on a desk and I would say, 안녕하세요, 노라예요, 중학교 슈가입니다. That's all I know in Korean. Right. Anybody out there Korean who's watching is probably like, she just massacred that. But anyway, that's saying, you know, hello, I'm Norah, welcome to the show, essentially. But I do think that was the beginning of thinking, wow, the news and broadcast journalism is so important. And of course, what got me into journalism is we followed the news so closely, and there was one woman on television that I admired who was covering the news, and that was Barbara Walters.
Oh, yeah?
And that's why I firmly believe, and if you see it, you can believe it. And that's kind of what my new book is about, seeing
and I
these
tell you,
women.
I remember the moment they said that, but I remember as a child feeling like I loved seeing her there, but I thought, is she supposed to be there? Because it had been so imprinted in our minds that females, I mean, we could do the fluff and stuff, but we do the serious news. So that just tells you how much it does impact people, and yet here I am today as well, right?
Yes.
You moved back to San Antonio, went to MacArthur High School. I went to John Marshall High School.
Go Brahmas.
Yeah, you were head cheerleader.
I ran varsity track for 4 years, ran the 400, the 1600 meter relay. We did quite well. Also was a head cheerleader, so I had the best high school experience.
Yeah. Meanwhile, if we were to just kind of parallel our lives, Deb was not a head cheerleader. No, Deb was in band. I was in the marching band, playing my flute and piccolo, honors Latin club as well. So you were
good,
yeah.
Deborah.
No, there's cheering Norah and there's flute playing Deborah right there. But I did become homecoming queen. I felt like it was like a Carrie moment, but that did happen. All right, higher education.
As anybody in Texas knows, that's impressive to become homecoming queen. Yeah.
It's because the band had 300 nerds in it, and they were all like, let's go vote for her. We're going to have a nerd as homecoming queen. All right, your higher education in early work. Did you know when you went off to college what your career aspirations by that time would be?
I did not. You know, I thought maybe I was interested in science. Everybody in my family has a science degree, and some are doctors. But I really ended up I've always worked, you know, since I was a kid. And so I had a lot of different jobs, and I interned actually at ABC News and This Week with David Brinkley. And that's when I got the bug. One day I got to go over to the White House. Bill Clinton was president of the United States, and I thought, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, and boy, have you done it. You covered 9/11 from the Pentagon. You covered 8 presidential elections, interviewed every living U.S. president, historic interview with Pope Francis. And so there you are. Now you are, as you said, you admired Barbara Walters, and now here you are in that place where you're impacting future female journalists as well.
Yeah, and when I left the Evening News, that was part of really what I wanted to do, is have a Barbara Walters-esque role, or something like Diane Sawyer does. Go after the biggest interviews in the world. You're right, I've interviewed every living president. No other American journalist has been able to do a long format interview with Pope Francis. That was a first to get. I wrote to him for 10 years. Wow. And so, you know, that's what we're doing now, is going after the biggest interviews in the world for 60 Minutes and for network specials.
And what's so interesting about it, you know, it was like how many decades, over 30 decades between Barbara Walters getting that position and then coming into 2006 with Katie Couric. So it took a long time, and still only 3.
Right, and that tells you something.
It does.
You know,
it does.
I think there should be more women, and there are. Broadcast journalism is a great career for women. You know, and if you think about the women who've held that position, they were paid handsomely. They traveled the world.
Walters was the highest paid
at the time.
Right?
That's right. She had the
not just woman, but
in 1976 had $1 million salary. So she really kind of, you know, crashed through the glass ceiling for many of us to appear and have the careers that we do today.
And with that said, you were appointed by a female president and CEO of the network. That was another kind of going
Susan Zirinsky, who of course is a legend and still works with us at CBS News. And you know, it was a pleasure to be an anchor. Well, I anchored the morning show, as you know, for 7 years with Gayle King, and then to anchor the evening news for almost 6 years.
Yeah. What was your moment where you realized how important television is and the messages that we're delivering, and how important your role was in it? Was there I know this is like saying which one of your children do you love the most, but is there that moment, that story where you said, I'm not just on TV, I'm making a difference?
I think there were many moments, yes. I mean, I remember after 9/11, you know, broadcasting and delivering important information that then took so many Americans to war, not only in Afghanistan, but then Iraq, and of course the tens of thousands of casualties that have affected people in the military. And I'm from a military family, so I understand that. You know, certainly too, during COVID, I mean, I was anchoring the evening news during COVID, and our ratings soared because a lot of people were at home watching, and we in many ways became a public health network, delivering people needed information about what to do, what is this pandemic. And so that was really a moment when I realized just how critical the role of an evening news anchor is in terms of not only delivering information, but also collectively perhaps soothing the audience in difficult times.
And with that said, news is such a different landscape today. You know, I asked my students, I taught a journalism class at a college, and I said, if a big news story broke right now, where do you go to get your information? They're like, oh, it's all the social media sites. And to see what people are saying, I said, see what people are saying, or see what true vetted journalists are saying with vetted information? No, just seeing what people are saying. It's to the point where I have a friend who, and I'm not going to say her name, but she's very successful, very smart, successful. She goes, I'm not quite sure what Trump is doing right now. I said, and specifically, what do you mean? She goes, well, he passed a law that men in America can't wear skinny jeans. And that was actually a joke on social media. She goes, no, I saw it. I saw it. And I was like, I think we got bigger concerns than men wearing skinny jeans. But she believed it. She goes, no, my hairstylist told me.
Oh, wow.
So,
well, look,
how do we change that?
Well, I'll let you handle your friend. But look, we're in the business of information, not affirmation, right? And think about that. So a lot of what we see on social media is affirming our bias, affirming our interest in
the echo
golf
chamber.
or skinny jeans, if you will. But information is really critically vetted, and there's standards that go with what we do in broadcast journalism. And just as Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America, I want to be the most trusted woman in America, so that people know, look, hard for me to understand these policy issues. What's the president doing? What's Congress doing? What's happening in the war in Iran? That they can say, you know what, I trust Norah. I want to listen to her because I know that she comes at this in a nonpartisan way. She's interviewed Republican presidents, she's interviewed Democratic presidents. People trust her on both sides of the aisle. She's in the business of delivering fact-based reporting.
And that's what We the Women can do.
That's right.
The name of your book, We the Women. We were sharing a story in the green room that I share with my viewers so many times, and that's the moment I saw Barbara Jordan in my Texas history book. It's the first time I saw a woman of importance in my textbooks, and then of course for me an African American woman, and I was mesmerized. I went and checked out books about, and so it's important to have those stories. You've written this book on the women. There's so many more women, like American history in particular. It's about more than Betsy Ross sewing a flag.
That's right.
You know.
That's right. I mean, I wrote this book, and I'm just going to embrace. Oh, we already got it on the screen, but I'm so proud of this book, which was 3 years in the making. And you know, we're celebrating America's 250th birthday this year. There's going to be a lot of parties, a lot of focus on that. And I wanted to make sure that women, who are the real architects of society, as Harriet Beecher Stowe said, get their due. I didn't realize how hard it was to write a history book, but what I also didn't realize is how much writing this book would change me.
And in what way did it do that?
I realized how little I know about our American history.
All of us.
Realized how little I know about how strong, gritty, and powerful women are. I knew so little too about our American history and how women are not a footnote in American history. They have been at the forefront of every great struggle and revolution in American history, and that should be acknowledged. And because if we're taught that as young girls in schools, and boys are taught that too, it will change our views of women in leadership.
Yeah.
Culture is about stories, the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we learn in school. You want to change the culture, you want to change bias, let's learn history.
Yeah, I was covering a textbook hearing at the Texas Education Agency one year, and people were up in arms over the books that had some factual mistakes in them.
Yeah.
And there was a woman sitting next to me, and she had a stack of books. Some of them were very old, and she said, "I'm so nervous to testify." I said, "Well, what are you going to say?" She goes, "I know we have some mistakes, but you know what, for first day of school, open it up and give the kids the correction and move on." She goes, "This is the first book that I actually see women in, and people of every different," we say America's a melting pot, the melting pot is in this book. She goes, "We're focusing on the wrong thing." And in her hand, she had her grandmother's book, and she had my grandmother's history book, not one woman in it. My mother's history book, not one woman in it. She goes, "My history book, Betsy Ross."
Wow.
And that was it.
Wow.
So the importance of it. Is there a story in particular in your book that you want to share with us? Because there's all 35 are great, but is there one in particular that you want to share with us?
Yeah, and just to echo your point, the National Women's History Museum tells us that only 15% of what we are taught in school focuses on the accomplishments and achievements of women. And this needs to change. And there's plenty of footnotes in the back of this book to know that everything in here is factual and has been fact-checked. There's so many great stories, but one of my favorite women in this book is Mary McLeod Bethune. And Mary McLeod Bethune was known as the First Lady of Struggle. She was a close friend of Eleanor Roosevelt's. She actually led the Black Cabinet in FDR's presidency. She's the reason that Black women were able to serve during World War II. If you've seen that movie, The 688 Battalion by Tyler Perry, Mary McLeod is in it just for a second, and of course Oprah Winfrey plays her. Yeah. And so she's one of these women that should be taught in school, and we didn't know about her. She grew up in South Carolina on a plantation. Her parents were enslaved. She was born right after the Emancipation Proclamation, the 15th of 17th children, and was educated and became, the Bethune-Cookman College still exists in Florida today. So she, to me, is one of my heroes. And you can listen to, and I point to in the book, you can listen to her giving radio addresses during World War II, and she has this great booming voice. I say she's like a female FDR, and talking about how our country needs to live up to the ideals in the Declaration of Independence, which is what we celebrate on July 4th, which is what the women in this book are all about.
Okay, give me another one.
Another one, Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, the first female surgeon who served during the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
Was there. They told her, you can't because you're a woman and you can't be a surgeon. She was there anyway. She was captured as a prisoner of war. Because of that, she was awarded the Medal of Honor. Remember, you've seen the president, it's that blue ribbon, of course, with the medal. There have been more than 3,500 Americans who have received the Medal of Honor. It's the highest commendation for bravery in combat. To this day, Dr. Mary Edwards Walker is the only woman.
Wow. And we know there probably should be more.
And there should be more. And then they tried to take it away from her.
Oh.
Because she wasn't technically in the military, because women couldn't be in the military in the Civil War. She refused to give it back. She wore it every day until the day she died.
There you go. All right. We
So
have
there's so many stories about grit and resilience.
Have about 30 seconds left here. Your advice to, because every third person I run into says, yeah, I'm in college, what do you want to do? I want to be a broadcast journalist, and and knowing what that really is.
Study history, right? Study the very best in the business. Be factual, and also have confidence and go after your dreams. The women in this book are patriots, change makers, revolutionaries. They never gave up, and they found confidence in community and surrounding themselves with other powerful women who wanted to get it done.
Nora, thank you very much for getting it done every day.
Well, Deborah, this is like the best show I've been on. And
wow.
Yeah. And what a great team. I love you guys.
There's definitely a great team here.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being with us today.
I love you. Thank
Love
you.
it.
Thank you so much.
Remember, she was the head cheerleader and I was
In the band.
All right. Nora's book, We the Women, The Hidden Heroes Who Shaped America, would be a great summer read, especially for a young lady. You can get it wherever. That's right. For Mother's Day, you can get it wherever books are sold. And I'm going to have my son read this book as well, because everyone should. All right.